In the quaint town of Lakewood Valley, surrounded by towering pines and softly murmuring streams, every holiday brought with it the somber excitement of family gatherings. I always entered those occasions with a smile plastered on my face, masking the reality that loomed behind my eyes like a dark shadow. My cousin was the sun, radiating warmth and light, while I stood nearby, a mere specter fading into the background. The laughter and clinking of glasses echoed through my grandmother's cozy living room, where every inch of wall space was adorned with photographs documenting our lives. I could easily find myself lost among still images of my cousin's milestones, the gleaming trophies on the mantle, the joyous smiles of family members as they celebrated his achievements. No one noticed me scrubbing the dishes or refilling the pitchers of iced tea. Look at him, I would think each holiday, my heart a heavy stone in my chest. He's perfect, the embodiment of charm and success, effortlessly drawing the admiration he seemed to bask in. He's got everything handed to him on a silver platter. Can you believe he got a full scholarship to that prestigious university? One of my aunts would say, her voice brimming with pride while my mother nodded along. Such a bright future ahead of him. Another relative chimed in, raising her glass as if to toast the very air he breathed. Meanwhile, I stifled the urge to roll my eyes, making my way to the kitchen where the scent of garlic and herbs wafted from the stove. I comforted myself with the knowledge that my hard work was making a difference, no matter how invisible I felt. The first time I saw my cousin truly flaunt his carefree lifestyle was during my grandmother's illness. It was a sharp turn that sent my world spiraling out of control. I will take care of her, I promised my family, confident in my role as the devoted granddaughter. I dropped everything, my job, my social life, to move in with her, trading the freedom of my 20-something years for the confines of a hospital bed and moments slipping through fragile hands. She just needs a little extra care, I told myself, holding her hand tightly as we sat in her dim living room, watching the world dissolve into the shadows outside. When she was too weak to lift her head, I would fluff her pillows, help her to sip water, and listen and talk about the memories she held dear. But while I faced sleepless nights and worried whispers about her health, my cousin was out living his life, attending wild parties and basking in the light he so effortlessly attracted. I vividly remember one evening when I missed another family function because I was too exhausted to go. I had promised my grandmother I would be there, that I would read her favorite book to her one last time. My cousin, on the other hand, posted pictures online, his handsome grin lighting up the night as he held up an ice-cold drink surrounded by friends. "Wish you were here, Mia, it's a blast," he texted me, a sharp jab cloaked in kindness. I felt an icicle of resentment pierce through my heart as I forced myself to smile at my grandmother, who slept peacefully, oblivious to the laughter of our family and the betrayal that echoed in my head. I don't know how much longer she has. As the weeks rolled on, my grandmother's health took a downward turn. I poured every ounce of love and devotion into her care, wishing desperately that the world could see my commitment. Each time I would hear my cousin's jubilant voice praising me for taking care of her, it felt like an empty platitude. A faint compliment somehow rendered useless, imbued with a sense of false generosity, meant more to dry the eyes of our family than to recognize the sacrifice I was making. Why can't they see? I found myself asking silently during those unbearably long days. Why can't they see me? When she eventually passed, it felt like an earthquake, the foundation of my identity rattling apart. That dappled sunlight that had illuminated my existence vanished, leaving behind shadows that loomed even larger. I was hollowed out, much like her favorite chair, now vacant and unused, yet that life-sucking pain was only the beginning of my heartbreak. At her funeral, which felt more like a lavish party for my cousin, I stood quietly at the periphery, watching, masking my rage with a well-practiced facade of sorrow. "Such a tragic loss," an uncle murmured beside me, glancing sadly at my cousin who reveled in the attention, accepting condolences like currency. I ground my teeth together, feeling waves of bitterness rise within. "You know, they say the estate is worth $600,000. That's incredible." With that revelation, the world around me blurred into the background, with the cacophony of voices fading as I felt the earth shift beneath my feet. $600,000. Right before my eyes, my entire childhood of care and devotion had been reduced to a grim whistle in the wind. Suddenly, my sacrifices felt weightless in the face of what would befall my cousin simply because he was more popular, more loved, and had shown up just in time. While my heart fractured at that moment anew, the anger bubbled beneath my skin and roared to life. All those years, the late nights, the meals I cooked, the stories I shared, everything for what? To watch him be lauded for merely existing, I thought, my fists clenching at my side. That night and every night following, I watched as he reveled in the spoils of my grandmother's estate. He boasted about it to our relatives, recounting how lovingly he had cared for her during her final moments. I stood behind him, invisible once more, grimacing in the shadows while he soaked up all the glory I had always craved. It amazing how she left it all to me, he said, eyes alight with glee as he grinned, his voice ringing through the room. "I mean, I did visit her regularly, and I did bring her treats now and then." "What did you expect?" I nearly shouted, but all that escaped my lips were crickets. Instead, I stood there, feeling my fingernails bite into my palms, breath shallow and quick. I swallowed down the fury threatening to spill over, biting back words that burned like acid on my tongue. They might not have seen my value, but I would not betray the love I had felt for her. "Sweetheart, you deserve it," one family member remarked, patting him on the back, completely oblivious to me. Their words washed over me like salt on an open wound. I blinked hard, fighting the sting of tears threatening to surface. All of this swirled together in my mind, giving life to an unwavering determination that galvanized within me. I fixed a hard gaze on my cousin, my burning resentment transforming into a dark resolve. This time I would not be the shadow. This time I would find my own light, no longer bound to the role of the unloved cousin. As the days turned into weeks, I found myself attending family functions with a new plan in mind, steel coursing through my veins. Every smile I wore became more deliberate, every laugh sharper. They had been blind to my strength for far too long. Now I would play their game better than anyone else while I bided my time. In the days and weeks ahead, I would weave my own tapestry of justice, an intricate pattern of revenge that would slowly unravel my cousin's careful stitchwork of a life built upon the backs of others. The darkness that had shrouded me gradually transformed into something much more potent, a deep wave of purpose I had never truly accessed. I would emerge from the shadows and take my rightful place in the light, not as the lesser relative, but as the force to be reckoned with. And with that determination, I could already feel the tide shifting beneath my feet. The game was far from over. I sat on the lumpy couch in my dimly lit living room, the familiar smell of stale pizza wafting through the air, and stared blankly at the flickering television. It felt like the universe was mocking me with its bright colors and happy people, a stark contrast to the heaviness in my heart. With each family gathering, the unease bloomed like a flower choked by weeds. My cousin's wealth was paraded like a peacock strutting in the sun, vibrant and impossible to ignore. He would lean back in his chair, a glass of expensive wine in hand, and regale us with tales of his adventures. Lavish trips filled with sun-drenched beaches and opulent hotels, gourmet meals that cost more than a month's rent. He reveled in our odd reactions, his confidence growing as he dismissed my struggles. "Oh, come on, Mia," he would say, throwing his head back and laughing. "Just take a trip, you can't be cooped up here forever." I would smile, but inside, resentment simmered. The more I watched him, the more I picked apart his stories, scrutinizing each detail. During last month's family barbecue, he talked about his latest car, a roaring beast of metal and leather. "You know, only 10 of these were made," he had said, narrowing his eyes and leaning closer. "They cost a fortune, but hey, what's money if you're not living large?" I remember my grandmother watching him, a glimmer of pride in her eyes as she tried to feign disinterest when he casually dropped figures like $20,000 as if it were mere pocket change. My heart sank when I wondered where that money came from, especially when her own bank balance seemed to dwindle with each passing month. Just this past Sunday, as the warm sunlight streamed through the window, I hesitated before bringing up the will again. "You know, Grandma, I've been meaning to talk about what's going to happen with your estate," I said, my voice shaking slightly. My cousin's demeanor shifted instantly. I caught the tightening of his lips and the way his smile faltered. "Really, Mia, are we still on this?" he snapped, his tone betraying irritation as if I had disrupted some delicate dance. "Why don't we focus on enjoying our time together instead of fretting over fortune? You should learn to enjoy what you have." The table fell silent. I felt every pair of eyes darting between us, a heavy awkwardness hanging in the air like thick fog, and yet I sat there frozen in embarrassment. "Sure, it's just a suggestion," I mumbled, wishing I could pull the words back like a whip. The laughter resumed, but I remained trapped in my thoughts, the sense of injustice boiling within me. Besides the glaring inequality between us, I detected something deeper beneath his charming persona. Deceit mingled with confidence, a cocktail that left a bitter aftertaste. The more I studied him, the more I realized how well he knew how to manipulate the room, make himself the centerpiece while making me feel small and insignificant. Then came that day, the one etched into my mind like a permanent stain. I happened upon a group of his friends in a cafe around the corner from my apartment. At first, I did not even recognize them. They were animatedly discussing their latest trip to the Caribbean. I could hear their laughter ringing out, the clinking of glasses adding a rhythm to their chatter, a symphony of opulence that was painfully familiar. My heart raced as I leaned in closer, hoping to catch a glimpse of their faces and somehow escape the invisible binds that held me back. "Oh my God, it was fantastic," my cousin's voice rang out, sharp and confident. "I have never experienced such luxury. There was this private beach where we were the only ones. You should have seen it, crystal clear water, palm trees swaying like they were dancing just for us." He paused dramatically, making sure they were all hanging on to every word. "I had this cabana boy who took care of all my needs. Drinks with little umbrellas, fresh fruit every day, and did I mention the seafood? I'm telling you, there is no place like the Caribbean." My hands clenched into fists. I wanted to burst in, confront him, and lay bare what I believed, a sham exposed under the sunlight. But fear held me back, fear of being the bitter cousin who could not celebrate someone else's joy. I listened as he continued, the casual boasting washing over me like waves crashing against the shore. "I'm telling you, life is too short to worry over such trivial things like money. Just dive into the good stuff. You only live once, right?" At that moment, an electric surge of resolve coursed through me. Money is too short and someone is using Grandma's savings, I whispered to myself through gritted teeth. Lightning struck hard as the pieces magically fell into place. All those spontaneous trips, the extravagant gifts, the expensive taste, it all came from one source, my grandmother's generosity, her hard-earned nest egg that he seemed so willing to squander for his selfish pleasures. I could hardly breathe. The sky seemed to darken as I realized that I could not allow this con to continue, a facade built upon the sacrifices of the one who cared most for all of us. As I left the cafe, the sound of their laughter echoing in my ears and my heart pounding like the drums of war, desperation transformed into a quiet, simmering determination. I would gather evidence. I would uncover the truth behind his carefully crafted lies. Weeks went by, each family gathering a play where I watched him weave his threads of deceit more intricately, cloaked in charm. My resolve only strengthened. I made careful notes about the stories, the inconsistencies, and the ways he dismissed important subjects in favor of keeping face. My heart hid behind a mask of patient observation, and each piece I gathered felt like ammunition. By the time the next family event rolled around, I was ready. The scent of roasted chicken filled the air, mingling with the sweet smell of pie cooling on the table, while laughter floated like music around the room. I joined the fray, weaving through relatives and avoiding eye contact with my cousin, whose grin seemed to grow wider with each mention of his latest acquisition, a brand new yacht he proudly claimed was his latest investment. My hands trembled against the table as Grandma's soft voice spoke up, gentle yet firm. Now tell us how the boat will help others, dear. It's kind of you to have such a beautiful toy, but do remember those who might need your charity too. Yet there was a flicker of uncertainty in her gaze, an inescapable bond tied to this man who flaunted wealth but had no thought for the family that raised him. Oh, Grandma, you know how it is. I work hard. My successes are my own. Besides, there's lesser businessmen who would take your words out of context. You know I always have your interests at heart. He replied smoothly, but something in his eyes shifted, hindsight the slightest chink in his armor, battling vainly against my growing hope. I leaned closer to Grandma, my voice hushed but resolute. Grandma, I think we should discuss the will more thoroughly. There's something I might need to bring up. My cousin's posture stiffened, and I caught the narrow-eyed glance he shot my way. A shiver raced down my spine, but I stood my ground, the familiar cycle of humiliation and frustration finally morphing into the warrior spirit I needed. Sweet girl, I know it's hard to talk about these things, Grandma began gently, sensing the storm brewing, but this family, it means the world to me, and its unity starts with trust. Let's keep this in the light. Exactly, I added, injecting as much conviction into my voice as possible. Unity and trust mean no secrets, especially when it comes to what is at stake. The air was heavy with tension as eyes flitted back and forth, the room charged with uncertainty. Should we really taint a joyful gathering with such talk? He said, his charming mask slipping momentarily to reveal an anger I had never seen before. But I pushed through the discomfort, chased by the fire in my belly. No more hiding. It's time to shed light on how you live off our grandmother's generosity while dismissing her concerns. You flaunt your wealth when it's her money you're spending. The tables swayed as murmurs spread like wildfire. My heart raced with every heartbeat as digging deeper became a necessity. I caught Grandma's concerned look, the warm light of her spirit flickering like a candle caught in the storm. I was trembling, the remnants of fear entangled with something else, determination. I would do this. In that moment, I knew then that I would unravel every thread of his deceit, expose him as the charlatan he was, and reclaim what should be rightfully ours. I refused to let another family event drown me in despair. I would be the architect of my revenge. The resolve coursed through my veins, transforming despair into steely determination. In my heart, once heavy with bitterness, now pulsed with purpose. A warrior ready for the battle ahead, I spent countless nights going through our grandmother's old financial records and documents, piecing together patterns in the family's finances that pointed back to my cousin's manipulation. The softly flickering light from my desk lamp illuminated the crumpled papers spread out before me like remnants of a crime scene. Each file I uncovered felt like a step closer to exposing him, and the more I learned, the more determined I became. My heart raced each time I flipped through statements, tracking the deposits and withdrawals that told a story of deceit. I found missing funds, inconsistencies that begged to be scrutinized, and I became a detective in my own right. I pictured my cousin laughing at all of us, thinking he could get away with it. His arrogance felt like a palpable force, something I was determined to counter with every shred of evidence I gathered. The evening of the family dinner arrived, and I practiced my smile in the bathroom mirror before heading out. It was tight, a veneer that I hoped would mask the anger and urgency boiling inside me. Fractions of my resolve flickered in my mind, almost like shadows dancing at the edge of my vision. I felt like a tightly coiled spring, ready to explode at the slightest touch. Arriving at our grandmother's house, the familiar scent of rosemary and baked bread washed over me, comforting despite the turmoil within. The dining room hummed with laughter, stories being exchanged, glasses clinking together like bells in a joyous symphony. The round wooden table was draped with a white linen tablecloth, adorned with our grandmother's cherished porcelain dishes. My heart thumped loudly in my chest as I took my seat, trying to engage in small talk with family members. Did you see the game last night? one of my uncles asked, his voice rich and familiar. I gave a distracted nod, but my mind was elsewhere, focusing on my cousin as he gestured enthusiastically with his hands, a wide grin stretched across his face. I hated how effortlessly he maneuvered through the room, charming everyone with his jokes and stories. Little did they know who he truly was. "That right, Mia?" he asked suddenly, pulling my attention back to the table. A volley of lively conversation surged around me, and I could feel the eyes of the family sliding to me expectantly. I nodded and forced a smile that felt more pain than genuine. "Right, of course," I exclaimed, hoping my voice did not betray my inner chaos. I could feel the anticipation coiling tighter within me, urging me to stay focused. After what felt like an eternity of digesting small talk and laughter, I knew it was time. I could not delay any longer. As the dinner plates were cleared and dessert was served, a rich chocolate cake my grandmother had made just for the occasion, I took a deep breath, feeling the air fill my lungs and hoping it would steady me. "Everyone," I started, gathering my courage. My voice, though shaky, cut through the jovial atmosphere that buzzed around the table. All eyes turned to me. Shadows of concern danced across the faces of my relatives as they sensed the sudden shift in mood. "There's something important I need to share," I continued, my fingers gripping the edge of my chair. I reached for the large envelope I had tucked under my seat, the very envelope that held the evidence of my cousin's deception. I could almost hear the rustling of the documents, screaming for the truth to be unleashed. My heart raced even faster as I hesitated. A voice in my head urged me to back down, to abandon the confrontation. But another voice, one fueled by anger and vengeance, propelled me forward. "I have been going through our grandmother's financial records," I said, feeling a coldness settle in my chest. Gasps filled the air, a chilling overtone of shock and curiosity from my family. Faces blurred together as I unfolded the papers, the crisp sound breaking the thick tension that was suddenly palpable. My cousin's smile faltered, fading from jovial to ghostly pale when he registered the gravity of the situation. "And I found something that you all need to see." As I laid the documents before the table like a magician revealing his final trick, an eerie hush fell over the room. I glanced around, taking in the wide-eyed faces of my aunts, uncles, and cousins, reflecting disbelief and confusion. Light flickered off the white pages, revealing numbers and transactions that spelled out the truth. These records show discrepancies. "Large sums of money have been siphoned off for years, and it all points back to you," I said, directing my gaze sharply at him, my heart hammering with adrenaline. Questions hung in the air, thick and heavy. "What are you talking about, Mia?" he asked, his voice wavering slightly though he tried to keep his composure. "You must be mistaken, those numbers can be misleading." He laughed nervously, but it only drew more attention to his increasingly nervous demeanor. I shook my head, confident now, the weight of every late night spent working through these documents lending me strength. "I am not mistaken, I have calculated and recalculated. You have been taking money from our grandmother's account, money that she could have used for her needs in her old age. You don't understand what you are talking about," he snapped, his demeanor shifting to defensiveness. "Those funds were meant to be managing her health care and related expenses." Aunt May broke the silence, though her voice wobbled, her face drawn tight with worry. "What are you saying exactly, Mia? How much are we talking about?" "Thousands," I said simply, feeling the satisfaction of finally voicing what I had pieced together over the months. "I don't know how you managed to do it, but these records reveal a pattern of siphoning. You have been skimming money under the pretense of taking care of her finances. Our grandmother trusted you." Strange childhood memories surfaced unbidden, of secrets whispered, of loyalties tested and broken. I felt sorry for the girl who missed out on who he truly was, and the agony of realizing the laughter that had once seemed benign was merely a mask over duplicitous actions. His face twisted in anger, and I could see the gears turning in his mind, desperately trying to craft a response, a shield against the truth. "You have no right to accuse me of anything. You don't know the first thing about finances. You've never handled anything as complex as this before." He was raising his voice now, drowning out the murmurs of my family. "I might not have handled it, but I can read and I can add," I shot back, feeling the swell of confidence rise in my throat. "And these documents are clear." I pointed a trembling finger at the discrepancies listed. "They show your handprints all over this treachery." Our eyes locked, and in that moment I saw a flash of fear, real fear. I had peeled back the curtain on his carefully constructed facade, showing not only the truth of his actions but the truths about him that he worked tirelessly to conceal. A tense silence enveloped the room, wrapping everyone in its suffocating embrace. Their eyes flicked between my cousin and me, anxiously awaiting the next act. I could sense the weight of judgment pulling at him, the concerned whispers pressing against his bravado. There was vulnerability in his eyes, and I realized in this moment that I had stripped him of his power, a realization that made me feel alive, vibrant with purpose. "You're lying," he spat, desperation clawing at the edges of his voice. "You think these papers mean anything? You cannot just throw around your suspicions and think you are doing the right thing." "No," I said firmly, my voice steady. "I am doing what's right for our grandmother. I brought this to her attention. I am taking a stand against you because you deserve to be revealed for who you really are." There was a slow understanding creeping into the expressions of those seated at the table. I could see the gears turning in their heads as they began to connect the dots. "Is it true?" my Uncle Joe asked, his voice quiet yet firm, probing for the truth that now hung in the atmosphere like a veil. Have you really done this? My cousin trembled, the walls closing in around him. You cannot believe her, he shouted. She is just trying to ruin me. I am family and you all should stand by me. But you are not being honest with us, Aunt May murmured, her brow furrowed with concern. You need to tell the truth. This is a serious accusation, and if what Mia says is true, it cannot be. He yelled, frustration spilling over as he pushed his chair back with a screech. I watched the moment the facade of confidence shattered, leaving only a frail semblance of who he pretended to be. You are all fools if you think you can trust her over me. He turned away from the table, anger radiating off him in waves. I could feel the tension swirling like a thundercloud, thunder rumbling in the distance of what was unraveling so publicly. As silence enveloped us once more, a statement that had been long buried came bubbling up from within me. A need to protect my family, but also to stand for those who could no longer defend themselves. Grandma deserved better, I murmured, my voice cracking. And in that moment clarity washed over me. I would not let him win. He had been profiting at our grandmother's expense, making a fool of all of us in the process. Now, as shadows danced across the walls of the familiar dining room, I felt resolute, energized by the support of my family that, however scared, was willing to listen to question. The storm inside me began to settle. I had taken the first step toward our grandmother's justice, and with the truth now out, unraveled like the tightly knit fabric of lies, it felt like the start of something bigger than just me versus him. The thrill of revenge coursed through my veins, the possibility of justice pulsing with every echo of the silence that filled the room. The confrontation was far from over, but I had ignited the spark, and the fire of truth would not be snuffed out easily. Watching my cousin squirm as he attempted to defend his actions was exhilarating. At that moment, everything around me faded until it was just him in the center of the room, his fidgeting hands, the tremor in his voice, and the beads of sweat forming on his forehead. The tension radiated off the walls like steam rising in a hot shower. I could see the realization dawning upon my family, the veils of ignorance being lifted one by one, as the bubbling resentment transformed into palpable outrage. It was as if I had flicked a switch, illuminating the dark corners of deception he had skillfully woven into our lives. The living room felt smaller than usual, packed with relatives I had grown up with, their expressions a mix of disbelief and condemnation. My heart raced, thrumming in my chest like a drumbeat as the first questions flew from the mouths of my uncles and aunts, slicing through the thick air. How could you do this to us? Demanded one uncle, his voice rising in pitch, each syllable dripping with a growing anger that filled the space. My cousin stuttered over his words, his usual bravado diminishing in front of the very people who once looked up to him, their admiration for him crumbling like dried paint. I didn't mean for it to happen, he stammered, his voice cracking. I thought I could manage everything. I thought you trusted me. His eyes darted from one face to the next, desperately seeking approval or empathy, but all he found was disappointment etched across their features. The brown wood-paneled walls around us seemed to close in, physically representing the shrinking circle of his supporters. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I reveled in the role I had assumed, that of the bearer of justice. I was no longer the overlooked relative in the corner of the room. No, today I was the flame to his paper mosh. The delight I felt was bittersweet, like the first bite of dark chocolate that compelled you to come back for more but was laced with a hint of bitterness. Justice? Justice for what exactly? He blurted out, his tone increasingly defensive. This is completely unfair. I could see his bravado faltering, as the once envious glances from family members shifted to looks of disdain. I wanted to laugh at the irony of it all. My cousin, the person who had for years reveled in his ability to charm his way through life, had now become the subject of our collective scorn. Murmurs of disbelief echoed like a chilling wind through the room, punctuating the tightening knot of tension. The family shifted in their seats, husbands whispering to their wives, mothers seeking comfort from daughters. The scent of burnt coffee lingered in the air, and I could feel my nostrils flare as the bittersweet aroma mixed with my own simmering rage. He was not only confronting accusations but facing the reality of how deeply he had betrayed the trust that had been placed in him by all of us. He's not trustworthy, I finally said, my voice rising above the others, the emotion billowing inside me like smoke. You all believed him, didn't you? You thought he was the golden boy who could do no wrong. My words were sharp, slicing through the growing chaos. I could feel their attention turning to me, eyes shifting to take in my every word. But look where we are now, $600,000 down the drain because he thought it was okay to lie to deceive us all. This isn't fair, Mia, you can't just accuse me like that, he shouted, his expression morphing into a mask of anger framed by panic. But it is true, I replied evenly, savoring the way his confidence frayed. You took our trust and threw it away like worthless trash. You think that we're just going to stand here and allow you to manipulate us? How do you sleep at night knowing what you have done? I am the victim here. His voice cracked again, the desperation transforming his protests into nonsensical ramblings. My relatives shook their heads, clearly piecing together the truth of his deception. Victim, an aunt interjected, her voice steady, echoing the disbelief many felt. You call yourself a victim while you have ruined lives. Do you know how hard everyone has worked, how hard your parents worked to build their lives, and you squandered their trust? His defenses crumbled like sand in a gentle tide, foaming waves of truth submerging his flimsy excuses. It amazed me, the unknown strength we were lending to each other. As each family member confronted him, it was as if we were uniting for the first time in light of betrayal. I could feel it course through my veins, a venomous elation washing away any ounce of doubt I might have harbored about calling him out. He tried to interrupt, but the words caught in his throat as his mother wiped a tear from her eye, visibly shaken. "You don't deserve any sympathy for your actions," she said, a tremor underlying her voice. "We put our faith in you and you took that for granted." The shame painted on his cheeks was the color of bruises, a deep scarlet that told a story of deceit. I felt the corners of my mouth turn up slightly. It was a strange sensation, almost like freedom, a release from the pent-up frustration that had plagued me for so long. He was losing his grip, and I reveled in every moment. "Do you not realize how many people you hurt?" I yelled, my voice trembling now with conviction. "The money wasn't just numbers, it represented dreams, hard work, sacrifices, and you have turned it into a joke." I tried to make it work. He cried out, his voice now shaky, the anger twisting into anguish. I thought I could turn it around, but when things got bad because you made mistakes, not because of any other reason. You stole from us, you betrayed us." He was silent for a moment, the chaos around him a whirlpool of accusation and disdain. I felt a wave of satisfaction crash over me. I had taken a stand against the unease that lingered in the air, and in doing so I had found my voice. The silence was deafening, and for the first time nobody cared to defend him. "Do you have any idea how hard we worked to put that money together?" an uncle said, stepping forward with an intensity I had never seen in him before. "We sacrificed vacations, small joys to have that money for our family. And you took that, you selfish brat." The accusation hit him hard, and I could see he was finally starting to understand the weight of his actions, the impact they had on everyone present. It was as if a light flickered on in the shadows of his mind, but it flickered too weakly against the overwhelming storm of doubt thrashing against it. And then it happened, his bravado shattered entirely. Tears brimmed in his eyes, and the hardened expression morphed into one of raw vulnerability. "I didn't mean to hurt anyone, I'm sorry," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "Sorry," I echoed, fiery determination surging within me. "You think your sorry is enough? Sorry doesn't bring back trust. Sorry doesn't fix the damage you've done." He looked around the room, seeing us all for the first time as not just family but individuals he had wronged. I could practically see the gears in his mind turning as he grappled with the consequences of his choices. "I was stupid," he finally choked out, his voice trembling. "I thought I could fix everything on my own. I didn't think That's exactly the problem. You never thought about anyone else, did you?" I said, feeling a tight knot of vindication settle in my gut. "Everyone, I'm genuinely sorry. I'll pay you all back. Just give me some time," he pleaded, desperation tinging his voice, a high pitch that grated against my ears. "I'll make it right, I swear." His words hung heavy in the air like the last note of a song that fades too quickly, leaving echoes of uncertainty. My relatives turned towards one another, faces expressing a myriad of emotions, some with pity, others with anger burned too bright to overlook. "Do not talk to us about time," an aunt said softly but firmly. "You've exploited us, you've ruined trust. Money can be repaid, but trust." She shook her head, gathering her words like scattered leaves in the wind. "Trust cannot be purchased." And with those words, a dam broke within our family. The murmurs swelled into a crescendo of disappointment, a symphony of shattered dreams and broken connections. It became unbearable for me to stand there and watch this unfold. I felt a shiver run down my spine, not from fear but exhilaration. Knowing that this was the culmination of all my struggles pushed me to fully embrace that moment. I saw it, my cousin was retreating, face flushed, shame watering the once proud glint in his eye. The realization had fully settled upon him like a heavy blanket, and all I could do was breathe in that intoxicating moment of justice served. As he stepped back, stumbling through the crowd that had once cheered him on, the family turned away from him, casting shadows of disappointment as they unveiled themselves from his deceit. I held my head high, feeling lighter than I had in years. I had been the catalyst of change, the pointed finger thrusting into turmoil and demanding accountability. It was now his turn to face the consequences of his actions, a consequence I delighted in witnessing unfold. There was peace in coming together as a family to confront his wrongs, and every murmur of disappointment resonated within me, a tune of harmony in what had been a chaotic symphony in the aftermath of the confrontation. A new air hung around our family, less of tension and more of awakening. We gathered in the old family dining room, the walls echoing faint whispers of our grandmother's love and wisdom, and I could feel the weight of a shared burden lifting from my shoulders. The inviting aroma of freshly baked bread mingled with the scent of simmering stew, filling the space with warmth. As I stood in the kitchen, surrounded by flickering candlelight and the faint sound of laughter from my siblings, I took a moment to let it all sink in. We had changed. No longer were we a family tangled in deceit and betrayal. Instead, we were evolving into something stronger, something more resilient. I peeled potatoes, trying to focus on the rhythm of slicing and dicing as I replayed the confrontation in my head. I could still hear my voice quaking but resolute, filled with a strength I hadn't known I possessed until that moment. "I know what you did," I had said, my heart racing, but I stood firm. The truth had become my armor. "Mia, can you help with the table?" My sister's voice pulled me from my thoughts. She was still the little girl who clung to me for comfort, yet now there was a new light in her eyes, a reflection of the strength we had all found together. "You okay?" she asked, tilting her head to meet my gaze. "I am," I replied, smiling as I set down the knife. It feels surreal, like we finally see each other clearly for the first time. I walked to the dining room where the long wooden table needed setting. Each plate held a small piece of nostalgia, all decorated in our grandmother's favorite floral patterns, reminders of endless family meals filled with cherished stories and hearty laughter. As I laid out the plates, the room buzzed with my siblings' chatter. You should have seen the look on Aunt Clara's face when Mia told her, my brother chuckled, his laughter infectious. You could practically hear her blood boiling. She deserved it, my sister chimed in, her eyes sparkling. What was she thinking trying to take the estate like that? Grandma would have never approved. I could feel a collective understanding wrap around us, drawing us together like a shield against the past. Let's not forget it wasn't just about the estate, I reminded them, my heart swelling with the newfound sense of purpose that had surged through me after the confrontation. It was about her trying to tear us apart. We all deserved to be here together without the whisper of betrayal hanging over our heads. My brother nodded, serious for a moment. It feels good now that it's over, doesn't it? I mean, knowing the truth is out there. The candlelight flickered, casting shadows across his face as I could see him reflecting on the turmoil we had felt: fear, confusion, anger, and ultimately relief. Yeah, I leaned against the dining room wall and let out a deep breath. Telling everyone the truth was hard, but keeping it in was tearing me apart. We needed this. I needed this. My voice trembled slightly, but it was filled with conviction, and I knew the words were the culmination of releasing years of pent-up frustration and hurt. Honestly, the whole thing was ridiculous, my sister said with a roll of her eyes, but I can understand why you waited so long. You really did a great job standing up to her. There was admiration in her voice, something I had longed to hear, something that felt like the missing piece in our family puzzle that was now being fitted together as we rebuilt the structures of trust and understanding. Just then my mother entered the room, her warm smile illuminating her face. Dinner is almost ready. Everyone gather around. We have so much to be thankful for tonight. I could see in her eyes that she was proud of me. I had carried a heavy weight, and now it felt as though it had been taken away, like the sun breaking through a storm. Mom, do you really think things will be different now? I asked, the uncertainty creeping in. I don't want our family to go back to how it was. I want to keep this feeling alive. She set a steaming dish on the table before turning to me, softly brushing my cheek with her hand. Mia, progress takes time, but if we keep talking and being honest with each other, we can rebuild what was broken. Just remember, honesty isn't always easy, but it is always worth it. Her words settled inside me, harmonizing with the newfound melody of our family recuperating after the storm. I wanted to be strong for them, just as they had been strong for me. We can do this together, can't we? I asked, glancing around the table, my heart racing at the thought. Yes. My brother and sister chirped back at once, and there was a surge of hope holding us firm in our beliefs. The table was set, the food was divine: steamed vegetables, fluffy mashed potatoes, and a glazed ham glaze that sparkled with glistening sweetness. We all sat down, and as we offered our thanks, I savored the feeling of unity wrapping around us like a warm blanket. I will forever cherish your bravery, Mia, my mother said, her hands clasped in front of her. You did what we all hesitated to do. You showed us how powerful truth can be. I just wanted to protect us, I murmured, my eyes stinging with emotion. That was the truth. I had wanted nothing more than to shield us from the poison of betrayal. It felt soothing now to know that I had found my voice, restored my worth, and forged a new foundation we could build upon. Let's raise a toast, my brother exclaimed, pouring sparkling cider into glasses. To family, honesty, and new beginnings. We clinked our glasses together, bubbles bursting with joy, and I felt exhilarated by the newfound sense of love running through the room. As the meal unfolded, laughter erupted like fireworks, erupting into vivid stories of our past. We recalled the hilarious time spent in our grandmother's garden, the way her laughter danced in the air like the blossoms blooming all around us. Each memory was a brushstroke painting our shared history, a history that was now entwined with resilience and trust. I still remember that time you spilled the lemonade all over Grandma's quilt, my brother said, nearly choking on his food with laughter. You thought she was going to throttle you. Surprisingly, she just laughed and told me to get a cloth. She had the best way of lightening a situation, I reminisced, a smile spreading across my lips, feeling the weight of her spirit in our hearts. As we ended our meal, my sister said, her voice softer now, I am really proud of you, Mia. I see you differently now, not just as my older sister, but as a protector, someone I can look up to. Her words struck a chord, and my heart swelled with pride, knowing I had not just rescued our family's legacy, but had also secured my place within it. Thank you, I said, choking on the emotions that unclipped the last remnants of the heaviness that had burdened me. It dawned on me that standing up for myself had indeed fostered closer bonds within our family. It no longer required just secrecy, but the truth and acceptance. Later that evening, as we sat around the flickering flames of the fireplace, I reflected on how the confrontation had changed everything. It was a bitter lesson learned, but one that had brought us closer. I could finally see the sun rising after the rain, the warmth penetrating my soul, an assurance that together we could weather any storm. What's next for us? My brother asked, breaking through my thoughts. With love, honesty, and plenty of communication, I replied earnestly, feeling empowered by the very foundations we were building upon. We should prioritize each other, keeping Grandma's values alive. If we remember her love, we can overcome anything. And as everyone nodded, agreeing in earnest, I felt a wave of confidence wash over me, finally understanding that by reclaiming my worth, I had not only healed my own wounds but had mended the very fabric of our family's love. We might have needed betrayal to realize the importance of unity, but now it was time to write a new chapter together, a chapter where trust reigned and love flourished within the walls of Lakewood Valley. The ultimate victory wasn't just about securing our grandmother's legacy. It was about honoring each other, embracing the lessons learned, and nurturing the love that bound us together through the dark and into the light.